My son told me I'd be living in the basement now. We need your room, Mom. The kids are growing up. I nodded, said I understood. I packed my things like a tenant being evicted from my own house. For 3 months, I breathed damp air and listened to footsteps in rooms that used to be mine. Then the city inspector came. I watched him descend with a clipboard and a flashlight, measuring, photographing, pausing like he could hear the walls breathe. When he finished, he posted a notice on my basement door. 1 word, he wrote it. Then my son stopped breathing. If you've ever felt invisible in your own home, stay with me. Sometimes paperwork sees what family won't. 3 years ago, when Michael first asked to move back home, he used all the right words. Temporary. Just until we get back on our feet. A few months, maybe 6. Sarah was pregnant with their 2nd child, and daycare costs were brutal. I had the space. It's only temporary, Mom. We'll be out of your hair before you know it. I believed him. Why wouldn't I? This was my son asking for help during a rough patch. I'd raised him to think family came first. The first year felt manageable. They kept their belongings in neat piles. Asked permission before rearranging furniture. Michael still called it your house when talking to the kids. Grandma's house has rules, he told 4-year-old Emma when she got too loud. But somewhere during the 2nd year, the language shifted. I noticed it gradually, the way you notice seasons changing. Your house became the house, then our house. The kids stopped asking permission to raid the refrigerator. Sarah started referring to our kitchen when she talked to her friends. I told myself it was natural. Families blend, boundaries soften. Temporary had become my life sentence. The financial conversations started innocently enough. Michael suggested we pool resources to save money, split utilities, share groceries. It sounded reasonable, responsible even. We're all adults here, Mom. Let's handle this like a business arrangement. He came to the kitchen table with printouts, simple breakdowns, neat columns, showing how much we'd each save if we coordinated expenses. You won't have to worry about the day-to-day stuff. Sarah and I can handle the bills, the maintenance calls, all of that. You can just enjoy retirement. He slid a few forms toward me, not dramatic looking, not anything that screamed danger, just updates, he said. A change so statements went paperless. A 2nd name added as an authorized contact in case something happened. Automatic payments so nothing gets missed. He explained each one carefully, professionally, like a man who wanted me to feel safe. I heard the trap in those helpful words, but I signed anyway, because saying no would have meant admitting I didn't trust my own son. And what kind of mother doesn't trust her son? Around month 18, the mail started disappearing. Nothing dramatic, just small things at first. The bank statements I used to find on the kitchen counter weren't there anymore. The property tax notice that usually came in March never appeared. I took care of that already, Mom. No need for you to worry about the paperwork. Michael started intercepting the mailman. Friendly conversations by the driveway while I was inside. The mailbox became his responsibility, then his territory. When I asked about a specific bill, he'd hold up his phone like a shield. Everything's digital now, so much easier to track this way. He wasn't lying exactly. The bills were being paid. The taxes were current. The lawn was mowed. The house stayed standing. But somehow, in the process of being helpful, he made himself the gatekeeper to my own financial life. I lost track of my homeowner's insurance renewal date, forgot when the water heater warranty expired, details I'd never delegated before. I'd owned this house for 36 years. My late husband and I bought it in 1987, when Michael was still in middle school. Now I had to ask permission just to know what was happening inside my own 4 walls. Mom, you're overthinking this. Everything's under control. That's the whole point of us being here. My own mailbox became a stranger. The gradual takeover accelerated in year 3. Sarah started making decisions without consulting me. New curtains, a different cable package, a landscaping service that showed up one Tuesday morning without warning. We figured you'd want the yard to look nice, Sarah said when I asked. The neighbors were starting to talk. Michael backed her up, always. Decisions arrived as a united front, already made, just being announced for my information. We didn't want to bother you with every little detail, Mom. You've got enough to worry about. Except I didn't. They'd systematically removed every responsibility, every decision, every small proof that this was still my home. I watched Michael give directions to repair crews like he was the homeowner. I listened to Sarah schedule appointments without checking with me. I saw them speak to neighbors like they were the residents, and I was the elderly relative being cared for. The title was still in my name. The deed still listed me as the sole owner. But ownership apparently meant something different when you lived with family who spoke fluent helpfulness. They were always helpful, aggressively helpful, preemptively helpful. So helpful that refusing them started to feel ungrateful, difficult, almost selfish. We're just trying to make things easier for you, Mom. And they were. Bills paid on time, lawn mowed, gutters cleaned, house maintained. All I had to do was exist quietly while they handled the grown-up responsibilities of running my household. I started spending more time in my bedroom, not because I was hiding, but because it was the only space that still felt like mine. The only room where I could close a door and not explain myself. Michael noticed. Mom, are you feeling okay? You've been kind of isolated lately. I wasn't isolated. I was being squeezed out. But explaining that would have sounded paranoid, bitter, ungrateful. How do you complain about being taken care of? I'm fine, I told him, just adjusting. But I wasn't adjusting. I was disappearing, one helpful gesture at a time, one transferred responsibility at a time, one decision at a time. 3 years of gradual erosion had turned me into a guest in my own house, and I still didn't realize how much I'd lost, until Michael decided I needed to lose the last room that was truly mine. The conversation that changed everything happened on a Tuesday morning in March. I was reading the newspaper at the kitchen table, the same table where I'd served Michael breakfast before school for 12 years, when he and Sarah walked in like they'd rehearsed their timing. Mom, we need to talk. Sarah stayed by the doorway. Michael sat across from me, hands folded like he was running a meeting. We need your room. Not would you consider? Not what do you think? Need, present tense, an established fact. I looked up from my paper and waited for the softening that usually followed his announcements. Emma's getting older, he said. She needs her own space, and with the baby coming, we'll need the nursery too. Where would I sleep? I asked. The basement, Michael said, as if he'd been waiting to say it. We've been looking at it. It's actually pretty nice down there. Spacious, private. You'd have your own bathroom, your own entrance, if you want to use it. Sarah nodded from the doorway like this was a generous solution they'd worked out on my behalf. It's temporary, she added, just until we figure out a more permanent arrangement. I'd heard that word before. 3 years of temporary. You want me to move to the basement? Not want, Mom, Michael said. Need. The kids are growing up. We've outgrown the upstairs arrangement. He spoke like the decision had already been made, like we were only discussing logistics now. The tone you use with a tenant after notice has been posted. When? I asked. This weekend would be good, he said. That gives us time to move some furniture down and get everything set up nice for you. This weekend, 5 days' notice to vacate my own bedroom. What if I said no? Michael's face shifted, not angry exactly, more like surprised that I still thought I had a vote. Mom, be reasonable. We all live here. We all have to make compromises. Sarah stepped forward then, voice softer than his but somehow more final. We're not asking you to leave the house, she said. We're asking you to be flexible. Family means making sacrifices for each other. The basement wasn't a request, it was an order. For the next 3 days, I pretended to consider it, while they behaved like it was settled. Sarah measured the basement for furniture. Michael pulled up dehumidifiers online, talking about moisture control like he was doing me a favor. You'll actually sleep better down there, he told me. Cooler in summer, quieter. And then he said it, casual, careless, like he was proud of himself. We already picked out the crib. We're painting your room next week. So it wasn't just a plan, it was scheduled. When Friday came, I helped them carry my bedroom set downstairs. My dresser, my nightstand, my reading chair. 40 years in the master bedroom, and I was relocating like someone being cleared out, not moved. The basement smelled like damp concrete and old laundry. The walls sweated moisture, leaving stains that never fully dried. A dehumidifier hummed constantly, fighting a losing battle. I stood there and finally looked at the space, the way a stranger would. Low ceiling, small windows set high in the wall, a cramped bathroom that felt like an afterthought, the kind of place you stored holiday boxes and extra chairs, not the kind of place you put a person you claimed to love. My body knew something was wrong before my pride would admit it. Within the first week, I developed a cough that wouldn't go away, headaches from the constant machine hum. My joints ached in the morning, stiff from the damp that clung to everything. You'll adjust, Sarah said when I mentioned feeling tired. It just takes time to get used to a new sleeping environment. But this wasn't about adjustment. This was about whether the place was fit for a human being. The dampness wasn't just in the walls, it was in my future. The real shock came 2 weeks after I moved downstairs. I was doing laundry in what used to be my laundry room when Michael appeared in the doorway. Mom, we need to talk about house rules. Rules in my own house, about spaces I'd been using for 36 years. What kind of rules? I asked. Well, he said, careful, like he was choosing words that couldn't be argued with. We changed the locks for security. The kids are getting old enough to reach the deadbolts. He handed me a single key on a plain metal ring. This is for the front door, he said. Since you're using the basement entrance anyway, it shouldn't be an issue. I looked at the key in my palm. 40 years of coming and going freely, and now I was being issued access like a guest. What about the kitchen? That's the thing, Michael said. We're trying to establish routines with the kids. Meal times, snack times. It'd be helpful if you let us know when you're planning to use the kitchen, just so we can coordinate. Coordinate. In my own kitchen. And the laundry. Sarah's got a system going, he said, nodding toward her like she was the manager of the house. If you could check with her first, that would be great. Emma's sensitive skin and the baby's clothes need special handling. Check with her, in my own laundry room. I realized then that I wasn't just living in the basement. I'd been demoted throughout the entire house, a tenant who needed to coordinate, a presence that required permission, advance notice, and somebody else's approval. These are temporary arrangements, Michael said, reading my face, just until we all adjust. But nothing about it felt temporary. New locks suggested permanence. House rules implied a system built to last. They weren't planning for me to move back upstairs. They were training me to accept my new place in the household hierarchy. 3 weeks later, I stood outside the laundry room at 9 in the morning, waiting for Sarah to finish a load, and the absurdity finally hit me. I was scheduling my life around my son's wife, in a house where my name was still on the deed. where I'd paid the mortgage when Michael was still learning multiplication tables. The power dynamic had inverted so completely that I'd become a guest requiring management. Emma, my 4-year-old granddaughter, captured the new reality perfectly when her preschool friend came to visit. "That's Grandma's room," Emma said, pointing toward the basement stairs. "She lives downstairs now." "Lives downstairs, not visiting, not staying temporarily." Her friend asked the obvious question. "Why doesn't she live upstairs?" "Because that's where families live," Emma said, with the matter-of-fact certainty of a child who'd absorbed the house's new rules. Families lived upstairs. Grandma lived downstairs. When I tried to explain what that felt like to Michael, he looked at me like I was being dramatic. "Mom, you're still part of this family," he said. "You're still welcome everywhere. We just need a little structure, that's all." Welcome everywhere, except I had to ask first. Coordinate schedules, respect other people's systems in what used to be my own space. That night, I lay in my basement room listening to footsteps above me. Dinner conversations, television noise, bedtime routines I wasn't part of. And for the first time, I stopped calling it help. I started calling it what it was: control. I started with the paperwork. After 3 weeks of asking permission to use my own kitchen, I needed to remember who actually owned this house. That meant finding documents I hadn't touched in years. The deed was still where I'd kept it since 1987. In the filing cabinet I hadn't opened since my husband was alive. My name, sole owner. The original purchase price typed in neat black ink. Property tax records showing payments year after year, including this year. I photographed every page with my phone. I downloaded bank statements showing automated tax payments. I printed my homeowner's insurance policy. My name listed as the policyholder, like it had always been. Michael had been so helpful managing the mail that I'd almost forgotten these documents existed, but they all told the same story. This was my house. I slid everything into a manila folder and tucked it behind my winter clothes in the basement closet. Not hiding exactly, just keeping it private. Every receipt, every statement, every piece of paper that proved legal ownership despite emotional displacement. Every document told a different story than he did. Then I documented the basement, moisture stains that never fully dried, the dehumidifier humming day and night, the small windows set high in the wall, the kind you couldn't climb through even if you tried, the bathroom that felt like it had been added as an afterthought. I wasn't angry. I was recording reality. The health part was harder to prove, but it was just as real. I logged it anyway. Cough starting 2 days after moving downstairs. Morning headaches, joints stiff in damp air. I wrote it down because memory gets dismissed. Paper doesn't. 3 days of documentation made something else clear. I didn't need more patience. I needed guidance. I found an elder law attorney through the county senior services list. The office was downtown in an old building that smelled faintly like paper and lemon cleaner. The waiting room was quiet. That alone made my chest loosen. When I sat down, I laid everything out chronologically. Temporary move-in becoming permanent. The money conversations, the house rules, the basement, the key on the plain metal ring. I slid the deed across the desk, then the tax record, then the photos. The attorney didn't react dramatically. She just read, slowly, carefully, the kind of careful that made my throat tighten. "How did you respond when they told you to move to the basement?" she asked. I agreed. "Verbally? In writing?" "Verbally," I said. "Michael called it temporary." "Did you sign anything changing your living arrangement or property rights?" "No," I said, then because honesty mattered. I signed some bank forms, automatic payments, shared expenses. Things he said were easier. Her eyes lifted at that. Not alarm, recognition. "Here's what you need to understand," she said. "Legally, this is your house. You're the owner. Taxes and insurance are in your name. Your son and his family are, legally speaking, guests in your home." She let that settle before she continued. "But if this ever becomes contentious," she said, "they may argue you consented, that you agreed to the basement, that you invited them to manage the finances. And when families do that, they sometimes add something else." Her voice didn't change, but the room felt colder. "They may suggest you're no longer capable of managing property decisions independently." That landed like a hand on my chest. "The key question is whether you were making informed choices," she said, "or being pushed into choices that were framed as help. Family pressure doesn't always look like pressure, but it can still be coercion." I thought about Michael's spreadsheets, Sarah's sweet voice, the way every change had arrived already decided. "I don't think I was making informed decisions," I said. "I think I was being managed." She nodded like she'd heard that exact sentence before. "Family financial abuse is more common than people realize," she said, "especially when an older parent owns the home. The hard part is proving it when the takeover happened slowly." "What would you recommend?" I asked. "Keep documenting," she said. "Every interaction, every financial change, every decision made about your property without your input. And learn your rights, so the next time they say temporary, you can hear what it really means." "What rights?" I asked. "As the homeowner," she said, "you have the right to access every part of your property without permission. You have the right to decide who lives there and under what conditions. You have the right to manage your own finances." Then she tapped one of my basement photos, moisture staining near the floor. "And you have the right to safe living conditions in your own home." The word caught in my mind. "Safe as in what?" I asked. "Habitability," she said. "Not comfort, safety." She didn't lecture me. She translated. "A sleeping space needs a real emergency exit, ventilation that doesn't depend on one machine running nonstop, moisture and mold control. If a space doesn't meet basic safety standards, it's considered uninhabitable, no matter who owns the house." I pictured my basement window, small, high, unreachable. I pictured the dehumidifier, humming like it was holding my lungs together. "What happens if it's uninhabitable?" I asked. "Then the next step is simple," she said. "An inspection. If the city finds violations, they issue a written notice with a compliance deadline. And people have to follow that. Family feelings don't rewrite building safety." Habitable had a definition that didn't care about family feelings. I left her office with a thin packet about senior property rights, a checklist of what to document, and a clarity I hadn't felt in months. Michael could rearrange my emotional boundaries all he wanted, but he couldn't rearrange safety standards. That night, I opened my laptop in the basement and went to the city's building department website. I didn't need every code number. I needed the basics, the parts written in plain language, emergency exit requirements, ventilation, moisture, what counts as a legal sleeping space. By the time I shut the laptop, I wasn't guessing anymore. The basement I was living in failed on multiple points, and I finally had something objective. Something that didn't depend on whether my son felt guilty or my daughter-in-law felt kind. Then I heard Michael upstairs talking to Sarah. "We'll start painting Mom's room Monday," he said. "Cribs arriving Wednesday." A schedule, a deadline. They were moving forward as if my bedroom was already gone. I looked down at the manila folder in my closet, deed, taxes, photos, and understood what my next move had to be. The question wasn't whether I was right. The question was whether I was ready to make the system see what my family refused to. I called the city's building department on a Wednesday morning while Michael was at work and Sarah was out with the kids. "I'd like to request a safety inspection for a basement bedroom," I told the clerk. "Is this a rental property or your primary residence?" "Primary residence," I said. "I'm concerned the basement living space may not meet basic safety standards." Her tone stayed matter of fact. No judgment, no curiosity about family dynamics, just someone processing a routine request. "We can schedule an inspector for Friday morning," she said. "Someone will call Thursday to confirm the time window." "How long does an inspection usually take?" 30 to 45 minutes for a single room. The inspector will need access and may take measurements and photographs for the report. 2 days, to act without turning it into another argument. I didn't need to lie, I just needed to ask questions. Thursday evening, Michael casually mentioned he'd taken Friday morning off to handle a little maintenance. "What kind of maintenance?" I asked. "Just some touch-ups in the basement," he said. "Thought I'd fix that moisture issue you mentioned." So he'd noticed the problem too. Interesting how it suddenly mattered when I hadn't even raised my voice about it. "I might be out running errands Friday morning," I said, as casually as I could. "No problem, Mom," he said. "I'll be here if anyone needs to get in." Friday arrived gray and humid, the kind of weather that made the basement feel even more oppressive. I waited upstairs, watching through the living room window. A city vehicle pulled up around 10. A white pickup with municipal plates. The inspector stepped out with a clipboard, a flashlight, and the quiet posture of someone who'd seen too many shortcuts taken behind closed doors. I met him at the front door before Michael could intercept. "Ma'am," he said, checking his paperwork, "you requested an inspection of a basement bedroom?" "Yes," I said. "That's right." Michael appeared in the hallway behind me, wiping his hands on a rag. "Inspector," Michael said, bright and friendly. "I'm her son. I wasn't expecting anyone today." The inspector nodded politely, but his eyes returned to me. "I'll need the property owner to show me the space and explain any concerns," he said. Michael stepped forward with that helpful smile. "I can show you around," he said. "We've been doing improvements down there. Moisture control, better lighting, real family project." "I appreciate that," the inspector said, still polite, still firm. "But I need to speak with the owner first." It wasn't a social visit. We went downstairs. Michael trailed behind us, talking about upgrades and good intentions. The inspector didn't argue. He didn't reassure. He simply listened without committing to anything. In the basement, he became methodical. He started with the windows, small, high, the kind that looked like an afterthought until you imagined smoke and panic. "These are the bedroom windows?" he asked, snapping photos. "Yes," I said. He measured, wrote something down, measured again. "For a sleeping room," he said, not loudly, not dramatically. "There has to be a usable emergency escape opening. This looks undersized." Michael jumped in, fast. "We can expand them," he said. "Whatever it takes. We're happy to bring it up to code." The inspector didn't respond to the promise. He moved on. He photographed the moisture stains, touched the wall near the floor where the dampness lived. He looked at the dehumidifier humming in the corner like a life support machine. "Is this running all the time?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "If it stops, the air feels heavy." He made another note. He checked outlets, looked at the ceiling height, not with emotion, just with standards in his head and a tape measure in his hand. Michael kept offering explanations. "We're planning to seal foundation cracks, add ventilation, really make this a proper space." The inspector stayed calm. Window, moisture, ventilation, ceiling, one item after another, compared against requirements that existed whether Michael approved of them or not. After about 25 minutes, he shut his folder. "What happens next?" Michael asked, still trying to steer the conversation. "Do we get a report?" Recommendations? I'll complete the written report, the inspector said. If there are violations, the owner will receive a notice with correction requirements and a compliance deadline. And if it looks fine, then you'll receive a letter stating the space meets basic habitability standards. He packed up efficiently. Another basement. Another family convinced they could talk their way around safety. I walked him to his truck. "Thank you for coming so quickly," I said. "Just doing my job," he replied. "You should have results within a day." Michael stood in the doorway watching the truck pull away. "That went well," he said, forcing easy confidence. He seemed reasonable. Whatever minor issues he found, we can handle. Saturday morning, I was in the kitchen when I heard Michael's footsteps going down the basement stairs. Then silence, then fast footsteps coming back up. "Mom," he called, voice tight in a way I hadn't heard in years. I turned and saw him holding a single sheet of paper. Official letterhead, a stamp, the kind of paper you can't argue with. "There's a notice downstairs," he said quietly. We walked down together. On my basement bedroom door was a bright yellow notice posted at eye level, an official seal in the corner, a case number, the inspector's signature at the bottom, and in the center, bold, black, impossible, one word, uninhabitable. Below it, smaller print explained what the word meant. The space could not be used as a sleeping room until specific violations were corrected. Egress, moisture, ventilation, the basics. At the bottom was the part Michael couldn't smile through. Compliance deadline, 30 days. Michael read it once, then again. Like the letters might rearrange themselves into something kinder. "This has to be a mistake," he said. I looked at the seal, the stamp, the language that didn't care about excuses. "It doesn't look like a mistake," I said. "But we can fix it," he said quickly. "Windows, moisture, ventilation. It's just money and time." He was talking the way people talk when they're trying to solve their way out of panic. "Maybe we can explain your family, not a tenant," he added, desperate. "Get an exception, something." I didn't argue the law with him. I simply pointed at the notice again. "This isn't about family," I said. "It's about safety." He stared at the yellow paper, swallowing hard. "The windows alone," he murmured, already calculating. "We'd have to excavate, put in window wells, waterproof, the moisture." He trailed off, at the part he didn't want to say out loud. Some problems aren't touch-ups. Some problems are the price of pretending. I waited until he ran out of solutions. Then I said it, quietly, like a fact. "Or I move back upstairs." Michael blinked like the option had never existed. "But the kids, Emma needs space. The baby needs a nursery." "The kids can't use a bedroom that's legally uninhabitable either," I said. That stopped him, because for the first time in 3 years, this wasn't something he could manage with charm. This was an official deadline posted on a door. 30 days, not negotiable, not emotional, not family. The notice stayed there, bright yellow against the basement wood, official proof that my living situation wasn't just uncomfortable, it was illegal. And I went upstairs and started planning my move back to my own bedroom. He wrote one word, then my son stopped breathing. The notice stayed posted while Michael made calls, to contractors, to permit offices, to anyone he thought might translate a hard deadline into a softer one. "What do you mean the ceiling height can't be modified?" I heard him snap from the kitchen one morning. "It's just a few inches." This wasn't like spreadsheets and grocery budgets. This was a compliance deadline with the city's name on it. A few days later, he found me reading in the living room and sat across from me with a folder, real paper, real letterheads, not something he'd pulled from a template. "I've been getting estimates," he said, opening it like he was presenting a case. "The windows alone would be around 8,000. Excavation, window wells, waterproofing. And the moisture? I asked. Another 4, he said. Barrier, ventilation upgrade, remediation for the stains. $12,000 to make the basement barely pass as a sleeping space. He swallowed before he turned the page. And the ceiling height issue, he said carefully. That's not a normal fix. You'd be looking at major work. $30,000 minimum, probably more. He didn't say the rest out loud, but we both understood it. Some improvements aren't improvements. They're reconstruction. I watched him do the math in his face. Cost versus convenience. Dollars versus entitlement. So, he said, shifting gears, I was thinking maybe we could appeal the notice, ask for a variance, explain the family circumstances. I let that sit for a moment, then asked the simplest question. Did the city tell you they make family exceptions for safety notices? Michael hesitated. I haven't called them yet. The notice gives us 30 days, I said. We're already burning through it. His shoulders dropped a fraction. Right, he said. So what do you think we should do? For 3 years, Michael had made decision about my house. Now he was asking what I thought about my own compliance notice. I think I should move back to my bedroom upstairs, I said. The words felt strange in my mouth, not because they were wrong, but because I hadn't said obvious things out loud in a long time. But where would the kids sleep? He asked automatically, like the house was a pie he'd already divided. In rooms that are legal bedrooms, I said, in spaces that meet basic safety standards. He started to argue, then stopped. The yellow paper on the basement door had changed the rules of the conversation. This wasn't about need and sacrifice anymore. This was about an official finding with a deadline. When would you want to move back upstairs? He asked. This weekend, I said. It was the same timeline he'd given me when he pushed me downstairs. Only this time, it wasn't my dignity on the line. It was his compliance. That's quick, he said. The deadline doesn't wait for convenience, I replied. That weekend, I moved my belongings back upstairs. My reading chair, my dresser, my nightstand. The same furniture that had traveled down in March traveled back up months later. Only this time, no one called it temporary. No one praised me for being flexible. Michael helped with the heavy pieces, quieter than usual. No enthusiastic planning, no speeches. Just practical movement, like we were undoing a mistake nobody wanted to name. Sarah appeared in the master bedroom doorway while I was arranging my dresser. Where are we supposed to put Emma's things? She asked. Emma can stay in the room she's been using, I said. Nothing upstairs has to change overnight, but we were planning to convert your room into a nursery. You can convert any room that meets safety requirements, I said evenly. This one does. Sarah's face tightened, like I was being deliberately difficult. We've been planning this setup for months. The building inspector had different plans, I said. That ended the argument. You can debate feelings. You can't debate a posted notice. The next morning, Michael knocked on my bedroom door, knocked like a guest. I have your keys, he said, holding out a full key ring. Front door, back door, garage, mailbox. All the keys I'd been separated from so slowly, I'd almost stopped noticing. I figured you'd want these back, he added awkwardly, now that you're back upstairs. The keys felt foreign in my hand, not because I'd forgotten how to use them, but because he'd trained me to forget they were mine. That afternoon, I walked down my driveway to the mailbox for the first time in what felt like forever. My mailbox, my address, my name. Inside were 3 pieces of mail addressed to me, bank statements, an insurance renewal, a property notice. I stood in my own driveway reading my own mail, and it hit me how much of my life had been filtered through someone else's help. It felt like recovering a sense I didn't realize I'd lost. The first time I made coffee in my kitchen again, without warning anyone, my hands shook. Not from fear, from the strange relief of doing something ordinary without permission. Michael came in for his travel mug. "Morning, Mom," he said. "Morning," I said. "Help yourself." He hovered, then cleared his throat like he was trying to return to old habits. "Sarah and I were talking about house rules going forward," he said. "Just coordination stuff. Kitchen schedules, laundry times." I looked at him for a beat. "I don't think that's necessary," I said. "Really?" "This is my house, Michael," I said quietly. "You're welcome here, but I don't need permission to use my own kitchen." He blinked, as if he'd forgotten that homeownership came with authority. "I just thought it would be easier with structure," he said. "The structure is simple," I said. "This is my home. You're staying here." Not cruel, not loud, just clear. "And any changes to the house, cable, landscaping, contractors, you run it by me first," I added. "No more announcements." He nodded. "That's fair." "One more thing," I said. "The basement bedroom is off limits until the violations are corrected. No one sleeps down there." Michael nodded again, smaller this time. "I understand." Over the next few days, I watched the house shift in tiny ways. Sarah asked before starting a load of laundry. Michael checked before scheduling appointments. Little courtesies that had disappeared over 3 years returned almost overnight, not because they suddenly respected me, but because the city had reminded them that authority in this house had a source, and that source wasn't their marriage, it wasn't their plans, it wasn't what the kids needed. It was my name on a deed and a notice on a door. I kept a copy of that notice in my nightstand drawer, not as a trophy, as a reminder. Paper doesn't forget. Paper doesn't get gaslit, and for the first time in a long time, neither did I. But Sunday night, when I walked past the hallway, I heard Michael's voice drop low to Sarah. "If we can't make her go downstairs," he whispered, "then we need another plan." And I realized the yellow notice had solved one problem, not all of them. 2 weeks after I moved back upstairs, Michael suddenly decided the basement needed to be fixed. He found me in the garden on a Saturday morning, talking the way he did when he wanted something to sound like common sense. "I've been thinking about the code violations," he said. "Even if we aren't using the space right now, it's smart to bring everything up to standard for property values. Property values, not my lungs. Not the months of damp air I'd tried to breathe without complaining. That's quite an investment," I said, keeping my voice even. "It needs to be done eventually." He had already picked a contractor. Morrison Construction. The estimate was $12,000. 8 for proper egress windows, 4 for moisture remediation, and a ventilation upgrade. "Morrison can start next week," he added. 10 days, weather permitting. I nodded like I was listening to a man describing a kitchen remodel. Inside, I watched the pattern I'd learned too late. When my discomfort was private, it was cozy. When the city posted a notice, it became urgent. The crew arrived Tuesday morning. From my kitchen window, I listened to the bite of shovels against soil and the hollow thud of tools against foundation. Michael stood outside with a travel mug, supervising like a homeowner improving his property. Over coffee, he pointed to the basement stairwell and used words I'd only heard recently, words that hadn't mattered when it was me down there. "New windows will have easy open hardware," he said. "Emergency egress." Emergency egress. The phrase had never shown up in any of his helpful speeches about making the basement feel like my own space. By Friday afternoon, the smell had changed. The basement no longer carried that cold, wet undertone that used to cling to my clothes. The air felt lighter, like it moved on purpose instead of sitting there. Bright, properly sized windows filled the room with clean daylight. The walls looked dry. The corners looked honest. "Take a look," Michael said, leading me downstairs. Much better, right? Objectively, it was. Safe, habitable, code compliant in a way it hadn't been when compliance was only my problem. It's very nice work, I said. He smiled like he expected gratitude to erase the last year. I'm thinking this could be a great guest room now, he said, when people visit. Guests, temporary, optional. People who could leave, not a mother who'd been relocated for convenience. The next week, the city inspector returned for a follow-up. I heard the knock first, firm, official, impatient with excuses. Michael opened the door too quickly, like he was afraid the man might write another word on another paper. The inspector walked downstairs, checked the windows, tested the hardware, glanced at the ventilation, and made notes without looking at anyone's face. When he finished, he handed Michael a form, permit sign-off, and compliance confirmation stamped in ink. Michael's shoulders loosened as if he'd just been cleared of something. I stood behind them, quiet, and let myself feel one small thing. The basement had become safe because authority had demanded it, not because family had wanted it. The financial conversation came the following weekend. Sarah appeared in my living room on Saturday afternoon with a folder tucked under her arm and a determined look that didn't match the soft tone she tried to use. I've been working on some numbers, she said. Now that the living situation has stabilized, I think we should formalize our financial arrangement. My attorney's voice flashed through my mind from weeks earlier. Don't sign anything that turns your home into a tenancy under their terms. What did you have in mind? I asked anyway. Sarah opened the folder and slid out printed spreadsheets. Columns, totals, and the kind of confident formatting people use when they want math to feel like law. We're essentially renting space here, she said. 2 bedrooms, shared facilities. I researched comparable rental rates. She showed me apartment listings with local prices highlighted in yellow. For the space we're using, plus utilities and shared facilities, fair market rate would be about $1,800 per month. $1,800, more than my property tax, insurance, and utilities combined. She kept going before I could speak, like she'd rehearsed the breath marks. I also factored in our contribution to household maintenance and improvements, she said. The basement renovation, repairs, lawn care, that's worth at least $300 a month in sweat equity. Sweat equity, for work they did because the city had forced their hand. So our net monthly obligation would be $1,500, she concluded. Very reasonable for this neighborhood. I listened the way I'd listened to the inspector, not impressed by the presentation, only interested in what it revealed. I appreciate the research, I said, but I'm not interested in a rental arrangement. Sarah blinked, genuinely confused, as if the folder meant she was automatically right. What do you mean? I mean, this is my home, I said, not a rental property. You're here because I allowed it. But we need structure, she insisted. Expectations, responsibilities, financial clarity. We do, I agreed, but it's my structure. She tightened her grip on the folder. What would you prefer? I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. You contribute to utilities and groceries, I said. You use shared spaces respectfully. Michael handles yard work and minor repairs as a household contribution, not as leverage. And long-term, she asked carefully, as long as you follow house rules and contribute appropriately, I said, but I make those decisions. Sarah hesitated, then asked, could we get this in writing? I could have said no, but I'd learned something about paper. It could be used against me, or it could protect me, depending on whose hand held the pen. I took out my notebook and wrote simple terms while she watched. Utilities contribution, $200 monthly, electric, gas, water. Groceries, $150 monthly. Michael, yard work, minor repairs, coordination before major changes. Sarah, respectful use of shared spaces. Advance notice for guests. Children welcome, except the master bedroom and my office. 30-day notice required for requested changes. Household decisions made by the homeowner. Any document affecting the home requires my review and approval. This covers the basics, I said. Changes require my approval. Sarah read it twice. Much simpler than what I had in mind, she said. Simple works better for family arrangements, I replied. She closed her folder, but her fingers didn't relax. That seems fair, she said, and I heard the words land like a temporary truce. After she left, I kept the notebook open on my kitchen table. 8 lines, clear expectations, defined responsibilities, unambiguous authority. Michael found the list when he came in for dinner. Sarah said you two worked out an arrangement, he said. We did. He read through it slowly, the way he'd read the inspector's notice weeks earlier, like he was searching for the place where control used to be. I can handle the yard work and repairs, he said finally. I know you can. And if we want to suggest changes, you ask, I said. I decide. He looked up at me then, and for a second I saw him understand what he'd been trying not to understand for 3 years. The management system was over. The homeowner was back. That evening, I posted the rules on the refrigerator with a red magnet shaped like an apple. Small, ordinary, unmistakable. 8 simple lines that said what the city's notice had implied all along. This was my house, my authority, my decision. And as I stepped back, I noticed something that made my stomach go still. On the coffee table, where Sarah's folder had been, she'd left behind a single printed page, face down, like she'd meant to pick it up and forgot. I didn't flip it over yet. I just listened to the quiet of my kitchen and wondered what she thought paper could do next. 3 weeks after I posted the house rules on the refrigerator, I realized the change was real. Not because anyone apologized dramatically, or because the house suddenly felt like a Hallmark movie. It was real because the small things kept happening, quietly, consistently, until they stopped feeling like effort and started feeling like the new normal. Michael asked before scheduling the cable technician. Sarah checked with me before inviting her sister for dinner. And Emma knocked on my bedroom door, waiting, rather than assuming my space belonged to everyone. These weren't occasional courtesies, they were protocols. One Saturday morning, Emma stood outside my bedroom, holding a picture she'd drawn, her small knuckles hovering near the door like she didn't want to make a mistake. "Grandma," she asked, "can I come in?" "Of course, sweetheart." She climbed onto the edge of my bed and smoothed the paper like it mattered. The house was there in bright crayon lines, with stick figures placed around it, me in the garden, Michael cutting grass, Sarah hanging laundry, Emma and baby Thomas playing. "That's beautiful," I told her. "Where did you put everyone?" Emma didn't even hesitate. "In their right places." A 4-year-old had absorbed what 3 years of erosion had tried to blur. Everyone had a place, and mine was central. I kept my own mail after that. No more, "I'll sort it for you." No more missing statements that reappeared only when someone wanted a signature. I collected my correspondence, reviewed my renewals, answered my own calls. Sometimes Michael offered help, and it sounded different than before, like assistance instead of management. "Mom," he asked one afternoon, holding a reminder card, "do you want me to call about the water heater maintenance?" "I'll handle it," I said, "but thank you." He nodded once and let it go. I noticed the difference in my body before I noticed it in my thoughts. I breathed easier. I slept without listening for footsteps, and I kept a simple folder in my kitchen drawer, city compliance sign-off on top, the dated house rules behind it, because I'd learned that peace lasted longer when it had paper under it. Sarah's contributions came reliably every month. $200 for utilities, $150 for groceries. Delivered as cash in an envelope. "This month's household contribution," she said each first Tuesday, plain and controlled. No spreadsheets, no market rate lectures. Just participation in a house where she was a resident, not a co-owner. The basement stayed empty except for guests. Michael's father visited from Portland in October and stayed 3 nights. He came upstairs one morning with coffee and glanced toward the stairwell. "Much nicer down there than I expected," he said. "Michael handled the renovations," I replied. He smiled. "Smart investment. Good bones in this house." Good bones. In my house. Not everything was perfect. It didn't need to be. In November, Sarah tried a small thing, small enough that she probably hoped I wouldn't notice. She held up a neat printed schedule. "I made a household calendar," she said, "just so everyone's on the same page." The boxes were labeled in tidy handwriting: appointments, dinners, school events, and in the corner, in smaller print, she'd written, "House meeting, discuss future plan." I didn't argue, I didn't lecture. I just tapped the page once with my finger. "If there's a meeting," I said, "you ask me first. And we don't discuss future plans for my home without me deciding whether it's on the calendar." Sarah's smile tightened for a second. Then she tore off the bottom strip and nodded. "Okay, I understand." That was the kind of moment that told me the rules were working. The test came, the boundary held, and the house stayed quiet. Later that month, Emma had a friend over for a sleepover. Around 9, I heard soft footsteps approach my door. "Grandma," Emma whispered through the wood, careful and polite. "What is it, sweetheart?" "Can Sophia and I get a snack from the kitchen?" "Of course," I said. "Help yourselves." "Thank you, Grandma." Emma understood something her parents were still learning. Access in this house flowed through me. Respect wasn't negotiable. It was the baseline. December brought a real test. Michael's company offered him a promotion that required relocation to Phoenix. He showed me the offer letter at the kitchen table, his thumb pressed against the corner, like he was afraid the paper might make the decision for him. "It's a significant opportunity," he said, "but it would mean leaving the house by February." "That sounds wonderful for your career," I told him, and I meant it. He exhaled, surprised. "Honestly, part of me doesn't want to leave. We've got a good thing going here now." He was right. The household had found a rhythm that didn't require anyone to shrink. "You should take the promotion if it's right for your family," I said. "And what would you do with the house?" "Live in it," I replied. "Enjoy it. Maybe use the basement as a proper guest room." Michael nodded slowly, like he was hearing the simplest truth for the first time. "I think that's exactly what it was meant for," he said. By Christmas, dinner conversations had become easy again. Please and thank you returned to our vocabulary. Emma helped clear the table without being asked. Thomas, now walking, explored with curiosity instead of ownership. Christmas morning, Emma knocked on my bedroom door at 7. "Grandma, are you awake?" she whispered, then added quickly, "Can we open presents now?" "Give me 5 minutes to get dressed," I said. "Okay," she replied. "I'll wait for you." And she did. When I emerged, the whole family was gathered in the living room around the Christmas tree, waiting in my house, under my roof, like guests who understood whose home they were in. They didn't begin until I sat down. That was when I knew the changes weren't temporary, just enough politeness to keep peace until they found another angle. This had become how they understood our family worked. And as I walked past the refrigerator, I saw the 8 house rules held there by a red magnet, dated, intact, and still unargued. Next to it, someone had added a new piece of paper with a small strip of tape, a note in Sarah's handwriting, Just 2 words. We should talk. I didn't take it down. I didn't respond yet. I just stood there a moment, listening to the quiet and wondering what she thought was still negotiable. 6 months later, I sat in my garden on a Sunday morning and watched the sunrise paint my yard in soft gold. The air smelled like damp soil and rosemary. A bird hopped along the fence line like it owned the place, confident, unbothered. In February, Michael's family moved to Phoenix. We kept in touch through weekly video calls. The conversations stayed polite, sometimes even warm. But when the screen went dark, the quiet in my house was the kind of quiet I'd forgotten I was allowed to have. The house felt spacious again. Not because rooms had changed sizes, because I had. The basement became what it should have been from the beginning, a proper guest room. My sister visited last month and slept down there without coughing once. She stood under the bright window in the morning and turned slowly, taking it in. "You seem more settled in your own skin," she told me over coffee. More settled in my own house, I thought. After she left, I did what I always did now. I walked to my filing cabinet and opened the folder I kept in the front drawer, the one I could reach without thinking. Inside were the papers that family dynamics had tried to blur. The deed, the inspection sign-off, and the notice that started it all. The one with that single word that had stopped my son's excuses cold. Uninhabitable. I ran my thumb along the edge of the paper, feeling the slight ridge where the ink had pressed through. Not because I enjoyed reliving it, because I needed the reminder. Some people will call your safety drama until the right stamp makes it real. I closed the cabinet and looked around my kitchen. The refrigerator still held 8 simple house rules under the same red magnet. The paper had softened at the corners from months of warm air and opening doors, but the words hadn't softened at all. My house, my authority, my decisions. And in the small space where fear used to live, something else had moved in: clarity. If you've ever felt like a guest in your own home, if someone has made you feel difficult for wanting basic respect, trust that instinct. Keep your own paperwork where you can reach it. Write things down while your memory is clear. And if anyone pushes a simple form in front of you and tells you to sign quickly, slow down. Ask questions. Get help. Because family should not require you to trade your dignity for peace. If this story felt familiar, you're not alone. Share your experience in the comments, or share this with someone who might need it, so fewer people have to learn the hard way that safety isn't negotiable, even under your own roof.